Hello everybody and welcome back to World of Warships Legends. My name is Spartan Elite 43 and tonight we are doing something a little bit different tonight. Now I know I've done this in the past, but I wanted to revisit it because we've gotten several new ships, especially battleships at tier 8. So I kind of wanted to go back over our tier 8 battleship tier list and kind of rank everything because I constantly get asked like which lines or which ships are the best at the tier for what I like my opinion. All right, so that's one thing I want to keep in mind, guys. These are my opinions. Your gameplay styles, the ships that you enjoy might vary, but we are going to be kicking this off with the Alsace. Now, I don't consider the Alsace a bad ship, so it's just not something I play very often. So I'll probably put this like middle of the pack, right? Like it's not bad, it's not good, it's just kind of meh, it exists, right? And I feel like that's probably where the majority of these ships are going to fall. Now, I do not remember the way I ranked things in the past, so I don't know how I'm going to rank them now, based on what that is, okay? So keep that in mind. My gameplay styles change, my feels towards certain ships change depending on how often I play them and stuff like that. So keep that in mind. But we do have some new ships, and as you can see, all the yellow names are the new ships that have been added since the last time that we did this. So keep that in mind. So next up, the Centurion, the brand new ship that's out there right now. It is literally just a Marco Polo. I personally cannot stand this ship. I don't think it's very good. And I say the same thing about the Marco Polo. I just don't understand why anybody would want this compared to, say, the Lepanto, which we'll go over a little bit later. But personally, the SAP primaries aren't enough to make up for its downside. So for me, I say D tier. Duncan. Duncan is one of my personal favorites. You guys know this. Do I think it's the best ship at the tier? No, but it is a lot of fun to play. As much as I love the ship and would love to just throw this thing straight up to S tier, I don't think it is an S tier ship. There's a couple of different playstyles. You guys know that I tend to shoot nothing but AP out of it, but a lot of people know that this thing has the Conqueror's HE, so they shoot a lot of HE out of it. Personally, I like, because it has better accuracy than the Conqueror, I like the AP. But again, it comes down to what your play style is. I tend to play really aggressively, so the torpedoes come into play, the AP comes into play. It really is a fun play style. So personally, I love the Duncan, and I think it's a fantastic ship, although it is a bit squishy, as you guys have seen, whether it be getting punched through the bow, punched through the stern, punched because you go too broadside. But if you're playing British battleships, you're probably used to it at this point. So as long as you're being somewhat aware of what's going on, it can be a lot of fun. So I'm going to rank this probably A tier. I think it's a very fun, good ship that most people can get behind. Frederick de Grosse. That's a whole other ball game. D tier. I ain't even got to say it. It's just not a good ship. Sorry. If you hate me, you hate me. But it's not a good ship. Giuseppe Verdi. Now, this is one of the beautiful Italian battleships that I actually enjoy playing. This one, Lepanto. I haven't played the Lepanto in a long time since it was nerfed, so we already said I might need to take that out for a test drive to see how I still feel about that. But Giuseppe is definitely fantastic. I don't think anybody can argue that it isn't. So I would probably put Giuseppe as low A tier. So we're going to try to keep Giuseppe all the way to the end. Okay? Anything else that goes in A tier is going to go ahead of that. And we'll rank, if you guys are wondering how I'm going to do this, the closer to the actual tier, the closer it is to being up in the next tier. Does that make sense? So whatever ends up at the front would be basically low S tier, high A tier. You could pick or choose depending on your personal preferences. But, yeah. So anyway, I think Giuseppe, with that radar and the fact that it is a solid ship, decently enough accurate that it gets you out of trouble, I like the Giuseppe. So personally, it's one of the few Italian battleships that I actually do enjoy. So there you go. Heisen or Heisen. Not a big fan of this one. I'll be real honest. It's not terrible, but it's not amazing. Kind of fits right there with the Isimo in my opinion. Better than the Isimo, but still not amazing. I would probably put Heisen solid B tier, somewhere in there. Probably towards the lower end of B tier. Again, The Japanese battleships at Tier 8, I personally don't generally enjoy, with the exception of Iwami, which we're about to talk about, and obviously the Musashi. Musashi is the other one. Where is the Musashi? Oh, it's over here. I was going to say, where is it? I know it's here. So, Iwami, I love this ship. I don't know why it's so different to me versus like the Heisen or the Izumo. They have the same guns, but God, does this thing hit better for me personally. Also, it has the torpedoes to get you out of jail free. Like it's a good solid ship, and it doesn't always get depth struck every time it over angles. The Iwami is one of the couple. I can't remember what the other one is. I don't know if it's Izumo or if it's Heisen that has the same armor scheme, but they have a different armor scheme from the Yamato hull that we're used to. So whereas Musashi, Yamato have a very, I mean, they have the same hull because they're sister ships, but they have the same armor configuration. Two of the Japanese battleships do not at Tier 8. They're different. And I can't remember if it's the Iwami and the Heisen or if it's the Iwami and the Izumo. But two of them have a completely different armor scheme that protects them from getting absolutely yeeted like a lot of other, or like the other Japanese battleships at the tier do. So personally, I like the Iwami. I think it's a solid ship. I don't know if it's full on A tier. I might put this at like high B tier though. It's a good ship, but it's a bit of a, I don't know. It's either low A tier or high B tier. So I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt and put it as low A tier for now. I like the Verity more than the Iwami, so I would still put this at the very end. So we'll see how that checks out. Now, Izumo, I hate the Izumo. I'm just being 100 with you. I know Zarkun and some other people love the Izumo. I can't get this ship to do for me. Like, this ship does not hit anything for me. I don't know why. I like the Amagi. I like the Nagato. I like those 410 millimeter guns, but for whatever reason, my Izumo just flat out can't hit a damn thing. Sorry for my language. By the way, if you guys enjoy my content, make sure you guys punch that like button. And if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's completely free. And you can unsubscribe at any time. So, with that being said, Izumo, definitely not one of my favorite ships. I think it's probably better than Centurion and Frederick de Grossa. So I'm going to put it towards high D tier. But for me, it's D tier. Alright. Karl the 14th Johann. This ship is a difficult placement because I don't think it's inherently bad, but its guns leave a lot to be desired. Its torpedoes are, while they can be useful, a lot of times not useful enough because they just don't tend to get rid of the guy that's coming to murder your facehole. And I do truly believe that at some point down the future, that this thing will get some sort of hybrid commander that brings out the best of the ship. And if that happens, we may have to revisit its placement. But as it stands currently, I would personally place the Karl Johann, it's C tier. I don't think it's much more than C tier. I just don't get along with the ship. I don't think it's all that great. The torpedo gimmick is funny, but I mean, it really doesn't have a lot going for it. It's everything you hate about German ships or German battleships with none of the upside. And without a good commander, you can't really take advantage of the best of the ship has to offer. If it comes out with a hybrid commander, I'll be happy to revisit that statement. If you guys remember, I said the same thing about the Atlantico when the Atlantico came out. I said, man, I like this ship. I want to like this ship, but it really needs a hybrid commander. And then lo and behold, down the line, they come out with a hybrid commander and the ship is absolutely cracked now. I think we can all agree. So do I think this thing will be absolutely cracked? Probably not, but it can definitely move up a tier, maybe even 2 if it gets a really good commander. But I could see it easily moving up into a B tier if they end up bringing out a hybrid commander. And if the commander is completely busted, then there's a good chance then it could move up into A tier because it's got a lot potential. It just doesn't have a lot to unlock that potential. You have to have a lot of dumb people playing like absolute morons in order for that thing to have a really good game. Otherwise, it's just kind of meh. All right? Lepanto. Now, this is another one that's kind of difficult to rank just due to the fact that like they nerfed it so hard. However, The next time I take the Lepanto out, I think I'm going to lean more towards the idea of an accuracy build instead of the full secondary build. Just due to the fact of what I've been able to get out of my Colombo, I really do feel like the Lepanto can benefit similarly to the Colombo. It doesn't have quite as many guns, but it's still pretty nasty. And then you're always going to have those secondaries in range if a destroyer decides to YOLO you, right? So I would say if it came to shove, I would probably put Lepanto low B tier currently. I think it can be better. Is that fair? Is it low B tier? Let's put it like middle B tier. I know this is technically at the front right now. But there will probably be a couple of other ships that get put in front of this. Speaking of, hello, Maine. Maine is one of those ships that it can be absolutely busted in the right hands. A lot of people struggle with the American battleships, whether it be the Iowa classes, the Maine, the Kansas, the Minnesota, the Montana, the Vermont. A lot of people struggle with those ships because they really do rely on angling well and positioning. If you're just sitting at the back of the map, bow in the entire game, you are not enjoying yourself in the Maine, the Montana, the Vermont, the Iowas, so on and so forth. However, if you can get these ships into decent positions for those crossfires we always talk about, they're absolutely busted with the amount of damage that they put out. Just due to the fact that, like, when you shoot superstructure, if it's a healthy superstructure, especially on a battleship, 20 to 25,000 damage is not hard to get. All right? And that's in a single salvo while somebody's bow tanking you. Now, usually you only get that massive hit one time, but you'll still chunk people for 7, 8K. And then if they go broadside, Lord help them. Like, you're sending a lot of American armor piercing downrange, and it is a tried and true armor piercing round that just absolutely yeets things that goes broadside to it. So, for that, I don't think I can put it at A tier. I would say, again, it's kind of high mid tier. So I'm going to put this in front of the Lepanto for now. So, again, I like the Maine. I just don't love the Maine. I have the Montana, so there's no real reason to play it. But at its tier, it's fine. It does everything you need it to do. It's got the armor to survive. It's got 2 less guns than the Montana. If it had those 2 extra guns and was basically a Montana at tier 8, I mean, it would easily fall into the A tier. But as it sits, I think it's high B tier. I think that's fair. Marco Polo, right next to your buddy, straight there. Just nowhere to be found. Sorry, I do not want to take you into battle ever again. You are absolutely abysmal to play. Speaking of abysmal to play, the Marlborough. Actually, I don't hate the Marlborough as much as a lot of people do. I always said from the get-go that this ship has a lot of nasty guns. Whether you're shooting HE or AP, God help somebody if they give you a broadside. You're throwing so many rounds down range that it doesn't matter that they're 14-inch guns. It just doesn't matter. The Rock knows. I know I've been saying that a lot lately. Blame Coach Greg. If you know, you know. But anyway, Marlborough is one of those ships that I think, yes, it's a glass cannon. If you get caught broadside, you're done. You don't pass go, you don't collect $200, so it is very weak in that instance. But as long as you angle well, you dreadnought shuffle, make sure that you tank the rounds at an angle, and then come out and shoot that broadside, you're going to have a good time. And whether you're shooting HE with a Big 7 build, or you're shooting AP without Big 7, it's a fantastic ship. So I would say Marlborough is probably... It's definitely at least B tier. I don't know if it goes... Yeah, you know what? I'm going to put it in A tier. It'll be lower A tier, but I would put it A tier. I think it's below Giuseppe, Iwami, and Duncan, at least in my opinion. But it's at least on the same level as them. Minnesota. Minnesota is the one that everybody always thinks I hate. I don't hate the ship. A lot of people are like, you hate the Minnesota. It's like, no, I don't. It's just not that much different than the Kansas. And it's different in ways that make it worse, arguably, than the Kansas. Now, a lot of people give me crap about their Spartan. It's got more hit points. Come on now. But it's also slower, turns slower, and has worse concealment. and has the exact same guns that do the exact same thing that the Kansas can do, a tier lower that never has to see legendary tier anymore. So that's why I say, like, Minnesota, as much as it is, like, it's a fantastic ship. There is no doubt in my mind that Minnesota is definitely an A-tier ship. It's just that, for me personally, there isn't enough of a difference between the Kansas and the Minnesota that says, yes, take the Minnesota instead of the Kansas right now. Right? Why put myself at tier 8 in a ship that's arguably at least the same, if not slightly worse, than the Kansas, just due to its concealment and its slow and all that thing. So I'm interested for your arguments. I've already heard a lot of them, but yeah, I would say that the Minnesota is definitely A tier. Yeah, I'm gonna put the Minnesota middle of the pack A tier. I'm gonna put it above. Giuseppe has the radar though. Ooh, these two are very close. Could be A, B, A, C. You know, these guys are like right next to each other. The radar is probably giving it the edge. I'm sorry. I love the Minnesota, but if I'm taking the Minnesota or the Giuseppe, I'd probably take the Giuseppe just because the proliferation of DDs at higher tiers, having that radar comes in real clutch. And then it still has that getaway smoke screen. So, I mean, there's a lot good about the Giuseppe. Now, you could say that about the other ones as well, but they don't perform for me as well as the Giuseppe does. Musashi. Long live the king, right? I mean, it's a Yamato at tier 8. What's not to love? This is definitely an S tier ship. Like, if anybody has any doubts, all you gotta do is go back and watch my freaking How to Yamato Better video. Posted it not too long ago. It's in my guides videos. It's even in its own playlist with other ships that I have come back and visited and say how to play better. There's a whole playlist devoted to how to play better in these ships. And there's ships that we haven't like played a lot of, but we've played enough of them that people ask the same questions all the time. What is this? How does this work? Whatever. If you win this ship in a crate, you will not be disappointed. Now, it's not the tech tree ship, obviously, but as a premium ship, if you get the Musashi out of a crate, you got the easy button. There's a reason I call it the easy button. Yama, Musashi, it's just easy. Overmatching makes them incredibly strong. Yes, if you play like an absolute dum-dum, you're probably getting sent back to port. But if you know how to angle correctly, know how to position, then the Musashi is almost second to none at the tier, at least for battleships. Pommern. Pommern is an interesting one. As much as I hated on the Pommern, I kind of don't hate the Pommern. Does it make sense? It's kind of like the elegance of a Bismarck, slightly better, but up against much fiercer competition. Yes, I know you can face tier 8s at tier 7 as well, but going up against legendary tier ships and a Pommern is just brutal. Not only are you constantly spotted, and Lord help you if a freaking carrier shows up, good God. Like, I don't know why the Germans can't shoot anything down, but good Lord. Learn to put some AA on your boats, folks. It's bad news if you don't. Ask the Bismarck. But yeah, Pommern, I would say Pommern is probably at least B tier. I would say it's probably towards the lower end of B tier, but I would say it's B tier. I don't hate the ship, but I don't play it a whole lot. It's just kind of existing, right? So Pommern, I'll put you up here, B tier. You'll notice how everything's kind of like grouping together in either A or B tier. It just goes to show you there really aren't bad ships at the tier, with the exception of a couple outliers. And this one is like a commander away from being solid. These ones, it just don't work for me. They just don't. It don't matter what my build is. It don't matter how I play them. Like, I just don't get these ships to really, like, synergize with me personally. Republique. This is another absolute legend at tier 8. This is my personal favorite battleship at tier 8. Yes, I say I have a lot of fun in the Duncan, and I do. Duncan is fantastic, love the ship. But if you build Republique as a accuracy build, which you should, by the way, absolutely should build it as an accuracy build, do not take Megalomania, okay, on the Republique. You want to do that on Jean Bart? Absolutely. You can get the reload down on Jean Bart to a point where missing a few shells here and there doesn't really hurt you. On Republique, you don't get that luxury, okay? And these guns are so god-darn good. If you get these things on a full accuracy build, deleting a Yama at range is not even that difficult. You catch people broadside, it is over for these 17-inch high-velocity guns. So personally, I put République right up here at Musashi. I personally prefer it over the Musashi, but it is definitely an S-tier ship in my opinion. There's a reason that this thing is a tier 10 on PC, okay? It is a nasty ship. And anybody who says otherwise, I don't know. I know everybody got different playstyles, but the République is nasty. I think pretty much any battleship captain that gets up to a higher tier that has any understanding of what a battleship should be doing at a given moment will enjoy the République. Now, the Ruprecht. Ruprecht is another one that is absolutely cracked at the tier. It was definitely S tier prior to the nerf. But now, is it still S tier? Or does it drop down to A tier? That is the question. It's definitely highest of A tier, for sure. But does it still stay in the S tier? And I think, honestly, yes. I think this is still an S tier ship. Despite the nerfs, you can get around that a little bit if you go full into secondaries. The new Bismarck Commander basically undoes the nerf of this thing. So, personally, I still would put Ruprecht at S tier. It's lower S tier than the other two, obviously. But it could make a case for high A tier. But I think it's still just as nasty as ever. The armor is good enough. The mobility of the ship is solid. You've got accurate guns that do damage, like they do really good stuff, and the secondaries are disgusting. On top of that, you've got long-range sonar. You've got the long-duration long-range sonar that GK and others don't get. And then on top of that, you also have 8 torpedoes per side. Right? I think it's 8. I think it is. What's not to love? Like, there's really not a downside to this ship, other than the fact that it's got a little bit weaker upper plating and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a fantastic ship. I still love the Ruprecht. I actually take Ruprecht out more than Musashi, even though I still think that Musashi is just better, just because it's Musashi. There's a reason I call this the easy button. Okay, it's simple. Like if you wanna go out, guarantee you a good game, jump into Musashi tier 8. You'll probably get lucky because Musashi and end up in a tier 7 lobby and then just bully everybody. Even if you end up in a legendary tier match, you're still bullying most of the people you come up against because it's a Yamato. Like there's nothing you can hate about the ship. Sovietsky Soyuz. This is one that I wanted to love so badly. There's a few ships that come into the game and have me hyped, right? Sovietsky Soyuz was one of them. Why? Because I love the Vladivostok. Like, you guys know, I don't take the Vladdy out very often, but I love the ship. I love the Lenin. I love Russian battleships at higher tiers because of their sheer inability to lose a flank. Like, you have to play really, really badly to get your butt kicked on a flank, because they just sit there and they keep shooting their guns until you stop. Unless somebody gets your broadside, which, if they do that, that's more your fault than theirs. If somebody gets your broadside, it's a whole other story. But you shouldn't be allowing that in the first place. So, Sovietsky Soyuz, to me, has been a disappointer. So, I personally would probably rank this right after Johann at C tier. I don't think it's as bad as Ismo, Centurion, Marco Polo, Frederick de Grosser for me. But it's definitely not as good as I would like it to be. It just doesn't seem to perform nearly as well as the Vladdy. There is very few situations where I go, I would rather be in the Sovietsky Soyuz than the Vladivostok. And that says something about a ship when you're thinking about upgrading from tier 7 to tier 8 and spending almost 40 million credits. And everybody always talks about, oh, it's not 40 million credits, I'm in a fleet, I get a discount. That's the discount on the buying of the ship. You still got to outfit the ship and upgrade the ship. And that takes a lot of money. A lot of money. Like I said, it's somewhere, even with the fleet discount, it's somewhere between it's somewhere between 36 and $40 million to upgrade a ship from full or from nothing when you buy a tier 8. So keep that in mind. These are expensive. That's why I like to come back and revisit these to kind of give you guys my opinions on them, because I get asked about them all the time. Like, ooh, what ship should I play? And I know this is not a full list of all the tier 8 battleships. I don't have all of them, but I have the majority of them. So I figure this will give me a pretty good idea of what's going on. So finally, the last ship that we will be talking about is the Temeraire. Temeraire is just a miniature Conqueror. That is all it is. It has ridiculously good HE. It's got a nasty heal. It's got good enough armor. Kind of reminds me of a Monarch that went more HE focused. You know what I'm saying? Yes, you can absolutely shoot AP out of this, and if somebody's dumb enough to give you a broadside, I highly recommend you shoot AP out of this, just like in the Conqueror. However, you don't necessarily need to shoot AP out of these things. You can pretty much just load HE, turn your brain cells off, point and click, and people get burnt and get absolutely decimated. And as long as you're not a dum-dum, you can do a lot of work in the Temeraire. I've showed you guys some pretty good matches in it. Do I think it's A tier? That's the question. It's definitely not S tier. I would put the Temeraire... I don't think I can put it up at A tier. We already have Marlborough there. I argue that the Marlborough is probably a little bit better than the Temeraire. So, in my opinion, I'm going to have to put the Temeraire mid-tier B. It's going to be right in front of the Owl's ass, in my opinion. So, yeah, there's your list, folks. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know down in the comments below, because I'm interested. I will also pin a comment down at the bottom with the link to this tier list if you guys want to do it yourself. If you guys think that I'm a dum-dum, you want to create a video and show me up and say where you rank them, you have my permission to do so, and I will leave a link down in the comments below so you can use all these just the way you want. But to reiterate, I think that Tier 8 in general is pretty lackluster in terms of its overall viability. It's definitely an afterthought, and it definitely feels like an afterthought by Wargaming at the tier. However, if you don't want to spend a gajillion years researching as a free-to-play player to get the legendary tier ships, which I totally understand, I can understand why some of you guys want to get to the tier 8s. I can. But for those of us who don't care and we just research everything anyway, there's no real reason to play a lot of the tier 8s when you have the legendary tier versions. It's just the way it is. If you agree, like I said, leave it down below. I'm interested to read. And if you like what I'm doing, punch the like button, leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and as always, I will see you in the next video.